We have for the past several Wednesdays a chance to check in with University of Nebraska President Ted Carter. That's coming up here just in mere moments. And later on in the hour, Jeremiah Searles back with another edition of the Husker Huddle. He will talk with Jamarcus Heydrich, who was a terrific Husker player and has had a nice career up in the Canadian Football League, including the championship in the Canadian League this past year. But we start with the University of Nebraska President Ted Carter. Great to have you with us again tonight, sir. And I got to start with the jacket. That's a good-looking jacket. Is there a story with that?
Hi, Greg. Yes, happy Top Gun Day. So on this day in 1986, the movie Top Gun premiered. So in honor of that day, I'm wearing the jacket that I wore when I went through Top Gun in 1985. I wore this jacket for my entire Navy career. It's got all the patches of all the time in the Navy. I've got my Top Gun patch here, and I've got the F-14 fleet flying behind me. And remember the most famous Top Gun quote, "There's no points for second place." I think we should adopt that here in the state of Nebraska.
Oh, that's fantastic, and it still fits. That's the best part of that thing for you as well. Last week, you made a major announcement when you announced that the university was going to freeze tuition for the next 2 years. Can you recap for us that decision for you and how you arrived at that?
Well, as we've been talking about to so many of your listeners and the people of Nebraska, and quite honestly, the people of our nation, the University of Nebraska is making a pivot towards our refocus on what our mission is in higher education, and it's really all about our students. So, we introduced the Nebraska Promise. We made a declarative statement that we're going to be open in the fall, and we're going to do it safely to protect our students. And then finally, last week, we announced that we were going to freeze tuition for 2 years, going to academics years 21 to 22 and 22 to 23. And we did that to give our students and our families some predictability and hope going into the future.
Most people, President, would say in this day and age, instead of taking money back towards you, you would be maybe increasing tuition a little bit, but you've kind of gone with an out-of-the-box approach to this. How are you going to pay for this tuition freeze?
Well, historically, that is what we've done. When we've come under tough financial times, we've raised tuition and put it on the backs of our students. We're taking a different approach now. It's really about accessibility, affordability, and welcoming our students back. So I'm looking to fill as many of the seats of our 51,000 and beyond. And yes, we're going through a lot of financial drills. We're going to be going through some changes through our programs. That is definitely coming. We're going to be making some tough choices, but we're going to do this internally within our own campuses and at central administration in Varner Hall. We're not asking, the state of Nebraska. We're not asking the legislature for more money to take care of these things that we're initiating. We think they're that important.
The tuition freeze announcement kind of is the third of a couple of very big ones. You had the Nebraska Promise one that you rolled out, then your intent to have in-person learning going on in the fall. What's the overreaching goal here for these decisions that you've been having here the last month?
Well, nationally, everybody's talking about online classes again. You heard the California school system talk about going online. It's the largest post-secondary school system in the country, almost 500,000 students. Harvard Business School just announced this afternoon they're going back online. 75% of our students have told us they don't want to be educated online going into the future. Now, we're not making that decision just because they've told us that. We have to make sure that we can do this with data, science, and a very calculated approach going forward. So that's what we're doing. And higher education is experiential. You can't get the same education in just an online or remote program that you can by being on campus. So we understand that. We think it's really important that we get it right and that we provide our education on campus. And that's where we're going this fall.
What reaction have you gotten from these major announcements here the last 3-4 weeks?
Well, in the last 3.5 weeks, we've seen our admissions applications go up 11%. That's more than 2% than where we were at this exact same time last year in the number of applications that we have going into the fall session. So we've not only closed the gap where most colleges are worried about a 15% reduction in enrollment, we've now exceeded that. Now, of course, we've got to follow on here. I would say to every listener, every sports fan, every Nebraskan, this is that moment to talk to your friends' families about this is the time to come to University of Nebraska. If they have an application in and they've been accepted, this is not the time to think about maybe not coming. This is the time to think about coming, because we're going to make it affordable. We're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of their mental health, their physical health. And when they graduate, we're going to have a job waiting for them. We will find a way to get them into the workforce.
Wow, those are some really impressive numbers. Again, visiting with President Carter here on Sports Nightly on the Husker Sports Network. This past weekend were commencement addresses at your various campuses around the state. How did you feel like those commencement ceremonies went? And then reflect back on what was a pretty crazy final month and a half of this semester for your faculty, for your administration, and your students.
Well, first of all, I'm just very proud of our faculty who stepped up during this very tough time. They made the change from in-classroom teaching to remote education, synchronous. And then I'm really proud about our students. I mean, this was not the final semester that they expected, but they showed a tremendous amount of resiliency, and we celebrated them. We celebrated them the best way that we could remotely. I thought the ceremonies that were run last week were terrific. And of course, we're going to offer in-person celebrations for those members of the class of 2020 across every one of our campuses at the appropriate time.
Well, very good. You have recently released a 19-page checklist that was helped develop by UNMC that can serve as a playbook, or the sports analogy there, for reopening American higher education. How's that tool been guiding you as you get ready to safely reopen the campuses here for the fall?
Well, we've been working on this for a long time. I think we're on iteration 37 or something like that. We've shared it with every campus chancellor and leader. We've also shared it with the leadership of K-12, community college, or state college system. We think everybody can benefit by looking at this set of things to do to safely open. Everything from how you manage air quality, spacing, personal protection equipment, the engineering that has to go into buildings, all of the things that we have learned and the things that we're going to have to be able to do safely for us to operate on campus. And interestingly, schools from the Big Ten, as well as some of our Ivy League partners, and they don't even want to be mentioned, they have called us and asked for this. So between UNMC, our Global Center for Health Security, this is a remarkable tool to help us do this very safely, smartly, and with science.
Well, and as you mentioned, it's not going unnoticed. You were on Fox Business Network the other day talking about some of these initiatives that you have launched over the last month or so. Tremendous publicity for the state of Nebraska and for the system here in Nebraska as well. It's got to make you feel pretty proud to be a part of all this right now.
Absolutely. And although I only had so many minutes to be able to tell them about the great things happening in Nebraska, I think one of the most important things is just the attitude of Nebraskans, the willingness to want to solve a problem and get on with it. I mean, we know we're not going to have a vaccine for COVID-19 by the fall, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to figure out how to get on with our lives, how to do the things that are most important to us. We've been doing a lot of that already. In higher education, as well as preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, high school, all of these things have to happen. And of course, I think sports are an important part of that. It speaks to the American spirit. It speaks to our sense of competition. And even the setting that I'm showing right now, it speaks to this idea of no points for second place.
Very good. President, as always, we certainly appreciate the time. Love the jacket. I'm going to need to see that in person at some point in time. Have yourself a great rest of the week.